Hi, everybody. Puffin here. We are now into the last 3 hours of Trump officially as president, and just watch, he's already left the White House. He's already given his last farewell address. So, very soon, President Biden. Yay! And I just wanted to give a response to Trump's last farewell address because it's basically a rehash of his last speech that I gave some responses to, but reminded me I forgot to say a couple things. For one, uh, the whole idea that he started a movement. I'll get back to that. But the first thing I just wanted to repeat, even though I mentioned it before, how racist it is to talk about the China virus, to call it that when there's other words for it. That's in my other video. I was kind of pleased when he first referred to it as the pandemic in this speech, but then later on in the speech, he doubled down on his racism and called it the China virus. Um, then he even explained that somewhat by saying, we all know where it came from. And this is the important thing I want to mention, is that while the first case of the virus may have appeared in China and then spread to other places from China, where the virus actually came from, Trump and people like him are more responsible for this than anyone else in the world. This virus and other viruses like it that have emerged and affected the human population that didn't used to affect humans, and other viruses that will emerge in the future, are all byproducts of global warming. If you don't understand this, I'll explain it real quick. Global warming has changed our natural balance of seasons so that species that you're usually kept apart by, they'll either die out or hibernate or something so they won't interact with each other to pass these viruses from one species to the next, are now doing so. And that's basically how it ends up coming to humans. So by resisting environmentalism and trying to reverse the changes of global warming, these people are responsible. Trump and people like him are responsible directly for this virus's creation, and we're coming from nature into the human population. And we'll be responsible for the ones in the future until we turn that around. More than that, it's just ridiculous to hear him talk about how terrible it is now when we've all heard him say that it's nothing and, make fun of people wearing masks, tell people not to wear masks, and all of his surrogates and supporters still repeating the same thing, that the virus is a myth, things like this. Even to this day, after 400,000 Americans have died, I don't even know what the total is around the world, but people denying it in the same way they deny the Holocaust because they're Nazis. It's a Nazi regime or protocol to try to kill a lot of people. And this is the thing about Trump starting a movement. He didn't start a movement. He's picking up, he's a figurehead for a movement that's been going on for far too long, and it's just the KKK. America First itself is a KKK slogan from 100 years ago. Most everybody knows it. He still uses it. He's still, it's still his brand. And there's nothing outside of his brand. It's the one thing he can't lie about is his support for the KKK. Like when they ask him about Proud Boys and he's like, stand by. So he can lie about everything else. He can even lie somewhat about, being with Putin. Because, Putin doesn't care what he says as long as he does what he wants. And this is the thing I really want to emphasize for people who just still haven't gotten it, that Trump is bad. He's KKK, that's one thing. And he would know what America First means because his dad or granddad was arrested with the KKK in a riot against a union organizing. So, in New York. So, he is part of that, and it's really obvious, especially if you're paying attention, looking for those signs, but also just from everything he does. But what really fascinates me, or, makes a good point to me, is how he not only does everything the KKK wants, and he hasn't done anything that they don't want. There's nothing that Trump has done that the KKK is displeased with. And the same goes for Putin. So how is this the case? Is this because because Putin is KKK? I mean, possibly. Putin is KGB, ex-KGB. What's the connection there? There may be more than we realize. But whether he is or not directly associated with the KKK, what really associates them is that commitment to fascism. And maybe the thing that even if they are different, like different sides of this thing, not actually connected within themselves, Putin and the KKK are both serving the oil companies. They're both part of, they're both pawns of the oil companies in what they do. Now, are the oil companies somehow the ultimate evil? Well, there's some pretty bad stuff going on from the oil companies, and maybe there's stuff above that. But the point is that Putin is controlling both Trump and Bolsonaro and these other leaders who are also coincidentally, leading the countries that um, have the worst virus problems, and coincidentally uh, were elected through Facebook shady practices, making fake accounts to make them seem way more popular than they actually are, etc., which has an effect and makes people, kind of believe in it. So for one, it's good to see that Trump's popularity seems to be nosediving, and people are all jumping ship. But until we really call it out for what it is and root it out of our country, which will hopefully be the game plan now, we're not going to recover from it. It's going to come back. It's come back from literally the World War II, from the Nazi era and regime, or been maintained in certain ways around the world, and it's affected us. And it's like a virus in that way. It's something that's corrupted the entire world and is worse in some places. And the way these things combine, the fact that this has had a disproportionate effect on minority populations, that's part of their design and plan. Not that they designed the virus, but they designed the way of trying to maintain it. So when Trump acts like China somehow did something to us, the person who did something to America was Trump and Putin and Mark Zuckerberg, through allowing all of these lies about minimizing the virus and the risk proceed for so long, and that being a cover for just irresponsible government, not actually trying to address it. Like all the stuff they're doing with sending the vaccine out would be great, but if they had done the same process with the test 10 months ago, they could have just stopped it without even having to develop this vaccine. So those are my thoughts. Trump also likes to take a lot of credit for the vaccine, but I feel like those are, companies that were doing that work anyway, and maybe aren't even American companies or whatever. I don't know how much credit he deserves for that. But as far as bragging about reducing regulations and things, like these are the things we actually need to have in some form to make sure that we protect our planet. This is one of the essential functions of government that we've been not just dropping the ball on, but aggressively going against in favor of corporations' profits. And, it's disgusting, and we'll stop. But all of these are part of the same thing, including, the justice for fixing the racial justice system, even just racism in general in our society. All of these things are so interwoven that if we really fix the problems, if we're really bearing down on any of them to fix them, we'll end up fixing the other ones too. So that's what I'm hopeful for. Again, we're only 2.5 hours now probably till Biden officially takes over, but Trump is gone. So see it, and your movement didn't start with you, but it will end with you. We're not going to have this fascism anymore, and we're going to call it out and expose it all for what it is, and disempower the people who have been empowered by it, because it's what it really is evil. So good is going to win. And thanks everyone for watching, and tune in again next time. See you soon.